We need a new language. Nature is our natural capital. Nature provides $125 trillion in services to the world. That's more than 1.25 times global GDP. Nature underpins fully half of all of the SDG targets. Just two examples. Forests sustain watersheds that provide water for 75% of humanity. Forests provide 2 out of 5 of our medicines. 2 out of 5 families fuel their households with wood. And 1.3 billion people depend on forests for their livelihood. When we think about agriculture, 2.2 billion people on the planet are farmers. We need nature if we are to achieve the SDGs. Over 1,000 governments, national and local, have declared a climate emergency, but it's actually much deeper than that. We're in a planetary emergency. We lose a football field of forest, 2 of them every minute. The average patch size of the Amazon forest is 17 hectares. By 2050, it will be less than half a hectare. And we're approaching tipping points in which tropical forests can turn to desert fairly soon. And we think about agriculture, 1/3 of all soils are degraded. 75% of our food depends on just 12 plants and 5 animals, 75%. And we've lost 75% of our genetic plant diversity and 1/3 of all of our livestock breeds. And we're facing 1 million species of extinction by 2050. In fact, about 10% are already functionally extinct. They will become extinct very, very soon. Why does this gap in financing nature exist? Why is nature so categorically and consistently undervalued by the public and private finance sectors alike?
I oversee projects where we look at designing different financing models to address, as Jamie said, different social and economic kind of funding gaps. But that being said, my economic colleagues would say that I think fundamentally we've talked a little bit about this over the past 2 days. There's a challenge when we don't price externalities. So when things are not appropriately priced and when there is not assigned value that really truly represents what it is underlying as an asset, including the environment and certainly nature, then the markets will be skewed. And so I think that what we've found is it is a thorny issue to talk about even just pricing carbon, and not just carbon, but I think some of the things that you just mentioned, which is the health, for example. Oftentimes people don't think about nature and health and the link there, both in terms of what nature can be used for in terms of making you healthier, but also your air, how you breathe, how you live. And so I think that, all of those externalities are very difficult and have been kind of academic in nature in terms of thinking about the pricing. But until that happens, we'll be doing Band-Aids, which is what I think we've been talking a lot about over the past couple of days. Very good Band-Aids, but Band-Aids in terms of having ESG screens, negatively screened funds, thinking about trying to be more positively inclined in terms of your investments and responsible. But until the market kind of shifts in that way, big picture, you will still just be making Band-Aids. I will say, though, that I think, on the pricing carbon part of it, so for a long time, for the past 10, 12 years, I lived in California. For those of you who have not been, since it's quite a long plane ride. In 2006, California passed AB 32, which was the climate bill that Governor Schwarzenegger put forward, and it helped to launch 6 years later California's cap and trade program. And so the goal was to limit or reduce emissions to below 1990 levels by 2020. So we're a year away. We actually already did it. California already did it. So it was achieved in 2016. And there was a lot of pushback and a lot of initial kind of criticism of the cap and trade program, and that's rightfully so. There are still issues with it in terms of the design, but I think fundamentally when we're talking about carrots and sticks, it was successful in California. The funding that is raised through the trade actually does pay for a lot of the green infrastructure that California desperately needs. And so I think there's a positive example there of what can be done when you start to actually think about trying to shift the market completely and how we price and value these assets.
This finance gap for nature and nature-dependent SDGs, what have you learned from your work on innovative financial instruments that could help us fill this gap?
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you very much to the organisers for the opportunity to be here today and to talk about land use. We haven't heard much about agriculture and forests until now. And a lot of the work that we do, also sort of surveying the state of climate finance globally and SDG finance, the majority of the finance that we're tracking is for renewables. We're able to get good data on that. We don't have a good sense of what the private sector is investing, sort of primary investment into sustainable agriculture, forestry. So that's an issue. But there have been some really interesting studies showing the value of the opportunity on the sort of positive side of all of this challenge. So the Business and Sustainable Development Commission did some interesting work a couple of years ago, looking at different sectors, including the food and agriculture sectors. And I think they valued the SDG prize at $320 billion per year, potentially. That's getting close to what we track of all climate finance happening annually, which is about $500 billion at the moment. So there's a lot of investment opportunity out there. But for whatever reason, it seems not to be happening in the agroforestry space. What we need to look at is how can different actors, public and private financiers, play their role to best effect and sort of collaborate together to mobilize private finance in particular at scale.
The issue of sustainable supply chains began to gain awareness with the Nike scandal. Well, all the corporates said, well, that's okay, we'll just draft a code of conduct and we'll say what our expectations are to our suppliers, and then we'll go and check, and then if they don't comply, well, that's okay, we'll put in an improvement plan, and that'll be the end of it. So fast forward 25 years on some, there have been very little improvements actually on the ground, as Jamie has pointed out, and also in retail supply chains. And companies have been pouring a lot of money into compliance and monitoring programs. And we believe, I believe it's because of the lack of incentives for suppliers, and these programs are based on sticks. We looked at leading companies that are building cash incentives within their supply chain finance, working capital solutions, and trade finance to really build real incentives for suppliers to improve. Levi's have put in place a program like this, Puma as well, only really just a handful. And I like to actually quote Michael Kobori, who leads Levi's supply chain program, who's been working at this for the better half of his life, really. And that's that sustainable supply chain finance is the only incentive that he has to play with. All the rest are sticks, and this is really a carrot.
Now, the previous speaker mentioned microfinance, which is actually a well-tested and proven business model for financing small loans. But when a business evolves and starts to grow, it needs more money, and then it actually enters in this missing middle. And those are businesses or farmers that have a credit needs, let's say, between 50,000 and 1 million. And together, this group in agriculture has an overall credit need of 250 billion, and only 50 billion is being met. So that is a gap of about 200 billion. Now, the question is, why is it happening? And a recent research from the Council of Smallholder Agriculture Finance revealed that the average loss on a loan to this group is about $1,000 per loan. And that only the loans that are more than $500,000, or $1 million, actually $1 million, to commodities like coffee and cocoa, they actually make profit. So there are a lot of commodities and farmers that are underserved because it's truly not a business case. Now, you might not know Solidaridad, where I work for, but you definitely know fair trade because you're drinking it or you're eating it. And fair trade was a label that was founded by Solidaridad 20 years ago. And why do I mention it? Because fair trade was for us the first effort to clean up a value chain and to make it work more efficiently, specifically on the social part and the environmental part. But when we did the evaluation a couple of years ago, we found out that we cannot certify farmers out of poverty. And that's something that really was not happy news for us. But it made us to innovate to a different area, which is the business case of the farmer. Now, I'm very skeptical about the business case of farmers. A lot of farmers, they farm on 2 hectares or less. And like you mentioned, you know, a lot of jobs are created in this sector. But actually, farming on 2 hectares is not a business case. When you look at the average age of a cocoa farmer in Ghana, it is 58. And I couldn't believe it when I first heard it, but it is 58. And there are no sons or daughters who want to take over the farm because it's not profitable anymore. So what will be the consequences of this trend? The trend is that you will see a massive dropout in the coming 10, 15 years in agriculture sector, primary agriculture sector. A lot of people will drop out. Young people will go to the cities, try to get a job over there. So it is extremely important, Jamie, to create jobs in rural areas. Now, how do we do that? By building up small growing businesses that actually provide services to farmers. And we have a Cocoa Academy in Ghana that is doing that. And what we do see over there is that the young people that are entering this Cocoa Academy, they're actually not getting a job in the primary production. They actually set up businesses for themselves to provide services to farmers.
Just a quick story. I was working with a public pension fund in the U.S. In my state of New York, and we were talking about integration of ESG and what they were looking for, and a couple of other funds who were in the room were saying, you know, listen, a lot of this seems like it's concessionary, or I don't want to take a haircut on the return, and one of the CIOs from the public fund said, well, you know what, we're actually really caring about the SDGs, and we're integrating them into everything that we do, all 7 of them. It's like, oh, good, all 7. There might be a few more than 7, actually, interestingly enough. And so I think that what's important about that is, one, they were doing it, they were trying, but also that I think we're at a point where everybody's starting to take interest in this. People, even the mainstream, even the folks that are not in the choir, who are most of the folks that I work with and come to our conferences, you know, those folks understand sort of what ESG means, or the SDGs, or they know they should understand them or know them, and it's a good place to be, but it's also a dangerous place to be, in the sense that we do have to have, you know, really rigorous and kind of data-driven opportunities that meet what they need. And not everything is right for everybody.